What's up, everybody? My name is Stoan Anthony, the best to ever do it. Now, you guys know that I bring interesting people on here. Now, this is my first podcast where I have a panel session. Now, I don't want to do misjustice to this introduction here. So I'm going to move this to the legend himself. He's going to do the introduction for everybody because I do not want to be here disrespecting.
Where
Let
am
him
I?
do it.
Am I there?
You're right there.
I'm right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's all suitable that we do this properly, and it's an honor, man. Thank you for inviting us to G2G and, to come and speak about something that is really, really important, which is the documentation of, from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So here with us, we have, the man who shows you what really being a man of action is. Speak less and do more, Mr. Momulimi, whose name really is a descriptive noun of what he does, where his name really describes what he does with his life in terms of being the farmer, in charge of food security. So food for thought, the best storyteller of Motswako, Mr. Momulimi, doing his thing, man. Honored to have this conversation. He's a deep thinker. And to my left, the rhythm and the melody of Motswako, Mr. Towdeemac. I always say, like, most people don't know that his name is actually my name. Our mothers were best friends back in the day, working for Radio Bob. And when he was in his mama's belly, my mother relayed the story of how my father's family rejected the name Lirotodi, and it's my grandfather's name. And Mama Tuli loved that name so much, gave it to Lirotodi, Towdeemac. And, I'm the OG, Maloma Tson. And when you have a wedding, call me Kitalaya Banyadi. Ra! Papa! The roots of Motswako. We grow underground so that the tree can thrive.
You know what? I quit. You host this podcast. You take this microphone. I don't want to do this anymore. Gentlemen, welcome so much to this. I feel particularly honored because anybody who's watched this podcast knows that I'm happy to be me. I'm happy and I'm proud of being me. But being amongst you guys is one of the very few times, and this is never heard on my channel before, very few times where I feel honored. I'm around people that I genuinely respect. Looking at you, considering that you are the root of everything. I said to you off screen that, off camera, that I didn't think I would ever meet you.
Yeah, that's crazy to me, though.
I thought, you know what, if ever you turn 150 and there's a funeral, it's like, you know what, that guy, when I was like 12 years old, yeah, that guy was the guy. I thought that would be me, and I'm very privileged to meet you. As far as Tody's concerned, we have met a couple of times. We rather acquainted, we won't say we're friends. Tody has led a lot of people into their ability to learn things as far as engineering, as far as the craft of art, and so much more. So he's been, a beacon as far as that's concerned, in certain institutions. Right? For those that don't know, I actually lived in Mafftown, Paputaswana, Mafftown times. This man, when I first heard him, I think when most people heard you was on the YBA2NW, the hidden track. And I'm like, this guy's got a big set of balls. He's got a big set of balls. But we won't get too deep into that because, some things are a little bit sensitive for that matter. So I'd like to welcome you all to the podcast today. As the OG mentioned, that we're going to go through a documentary phase of this entire video, documenting all the times that Paputaswana turned into Mafikeng and turned into the Mafikeng we know today. Now, as somebody who's lived in that period and that era and looked at these people and idolized them, I want to go through the stories because some of them I can relate with it. Now, let's dive in. Let's start with you. You were part of a group called Bongo Maffun, right? One of the earliest stars of those times. How did it work? Because you're from Mafikeng, the rest of the people from different places.
I think Bongo was just a straight up concept group, manufactured. Myself and Mosquito literally thought of the different departments, and then we set about populating them. And it was primarily modeled after Boom Shaka, because we were thinking, if you have, like, Boom Shaka had, Junior Dread as the rugged DJ, you had Tembi to a certain degree who was trying to rap, but he was not really a rapper. You had Lebo, who was the singer in Theo, who were doing most of the singing and stuff. So we literally thought of it like that, if we had three guys now, like, instead of having the girls in there, So you've got a singer, a rapper, and a rugged DJ. And we literally went about looking for those guys because in the beginning I was supposed to do a solo after Tebe's recording, because I was part of that whole crew and the demo that Tebe had recorded at that time. But
it's wild for me because S.T.O.A.N's not Maftonian. Right now, everybody was. If you were Maftonian, you were hyper Maftonian.
Yeah.
Right now, what would happen? Were you in Johannesburg, and then you and S.T.O.A.N, how y'all meet? Just a short story around that.
Muff was the place to be.
Oh, definitely was.
Yeah, it was the place to be. I think around 94, I would even take it back to 93. There was a vibe of guys like Dr. Kumalo, coming through. Cool. The whole town would buzz. The doctor is in town for that weekend. Hawaii, the Floyd's events and stuff.
And I think we need to actually give a shout out to Morris Roda, because he's the one that hosted a lot of those things.
Yeah. So even like Morris Roda became for a good part of the 90s, the 2000s, the early 2000s. He was the premier promoter in South Africa. So that shows you a lot of the grooming that came from so many different levels. The whole media industry, especially radio and TV, were dominated by people that cut their teeth at Radio Bob and Bob TV. Your Tish Matez, Bob Mabana, Glenn Lewis. You can keep just going. Melanie Bala, Notemba Madumo, and just you can keep going, bro. Quincy Kekana, a whole bunch of guys. Right. So Tim Modise, the two Timmies, both of them. So it's a kind of thing where this place everyone would go to, and leave a little bit of influence there. A lot of people that would go to Muff would say that that had been, say, to the US, especially guys from Botswana, would say this feels like me being in a part of the US.
And that's the thing that I wanted you to explain, is that there was this thing in the air that was not quite anywhere else. Yeah. If you were part of Mafikeng and you were born there or you came there, you left with a bigger energy.
Yeah, on Sundays, you're listening to that Hot 97, 2-hour hip-hop hour, like whatever. And we were recording all across. All my friends, we would record. After that, literally splice the tapes with sticky tape so that we could, cut out the announcers' voices, with the tape to tape recorder, and we were.
You got to break. We're gonna have Gen Zs listening to this. They don't know what tape to tape means. You got to break that down.
There was one brand called TEAC, right? And they had these like colorful stereo decks.
Ghetto blast.
Yeah, the ghetto blasters,
Ghetto blasters.
The ghetto blasters, I see you rocking it and clucking from across the beat.
Yeah.
Street, So I think at around that time, there was really a palpable energy there where Black people were allowed to express themselves in a way that was different. I mean, when even people like Caiphas and Leta and Hugh were banned in South Africa,
they could come to
their music was playing on Radio Bob. We were surprised that people don't know, Motali Bule or whatever song that was coming from those guys. Mom, they would cross the border and come back with merch before we even knew it was called merch. Like a Hessian bag with the LP cover sewn into it, So those guys, Oskido, when they were doing those student bashes, those were the places to come to get the vibe, Come back, there's a hook, go back with the hook. Tebe would do that, go party somewhere over a weekend, come back with the hook. Diabo, go feel it.
Yeah.
So Oskido got taken in by that you come to a town, and you're hearing
hold on.
kids
so
on demo.
Mosquito came there and I wouldn't say poached, but he was trying to extract from that.
He poached, man.
He poached. I was trying to be nice. I was only trying to be nice.
He poached. No. There were guys who were carrying us, guys like Aldrin Mohoti. So, those guys within them kind of cradling us still kind of handed us over to these guys. They were partying with these guys over a weekend at Aldrin's flat. They would call us to come through, call DJ Q to come DJ, and Q is DJing with maybe like that tape deck is in there, and then like maybe we're playing chrome tapes, the demo straight out of the bedroom that we did
The
on
one-take demos. that
yeah,
you
the
had to
one
make
take
it.
demos. You know what I'm
You
saying?
made a mistake. You messed up the whole tape.
That's what's up.
Re-record, and you couldn't re-record too many times because the
Absolutely,
quality would
bro.
You're
go.
ruining
Yeah.
the tape.
Yeah. So, that's what made us, like, when I got to Joburg, I was a one-take specialist for decades and decades. Go and do your verse, get familiar with it, get into the studio and do one take. Most of the verses that you hear, it was my first and only take of that. It's because that's how we cut our teeth doing demos. You had to get the song right, and then do the whole arrangement. This guy is literally playing it. And then later they got the XP50. Then you could literally record the songs now. You could sequence the songs and replay them later. But then, Bruce had to literally play the song straight onto the chrome tape.
But then that was your era. That was your time. That was the part where it was palpable, right? So we know that period to be the Bophuthatswana period, right? Then we move on a little later. Bophuthatswana kind of, fizzles off. And then we have the birth of new artists, right? Such as Morafe and all. So actually, there were people within your era as well. L Skills from Crowded Crew and and then Prof and then from Bafitile. How was music done at that time? Were they just doing it at the corner of Mega City, or were they just in the units somewhere doing their thing?
We were all rolling with Bruce. So Bruce took all of us together. So, and I would say the influences were the same. Now, the difference between all of us is what we did with those influences. So for a long time, the Crowded Crew guys and I would say Bafitile were more a little bit English-based, and it's when we did Summertime that I think everything changed. Now you had the addition of what's his name, Iggy Smalls, and he was influential through YFM, because now he was controlling the playlist. But he was getting that as an executive kind of directive from guys like Greg Maloka, where, like Bongo Maffun song was the first song to play on the test signal that they were doing for YFM, and we were the artist in terms of the imagery.
But then let's talk about that while we at it, right? Before I bring the other OGs that, you are their OG. Motswako, that word, when did it come about? Because from my understanding is that it originated from Botswana or the Motswako style, and then Maftonians popularized it.
No, don't believe the hype, man.
I shouldn't believe the hype. School me. I'm here to be schooled.
And for me, this is the importance of such forums like what we're doing, because there's a chronological evidence of what we're talking about. In 1996, we recorded Summertime, right? So that was the first time anyone had recorded a song, full-on commercial track, using Setswana, like rap, Setswana rap, right? We got that Yabo Elesama. The next year, in 97, we repackaged the album with Final Entry, right? And there's the album that had Bo, Hotel California, and Makeba and stuff. And that's when we formally got Thandiswa into the group. And we did a remix of, we had a habit of doing remixes of the most popular songs if the album didn't really pop off, but you wanted it to repackage it and just re-feed it to the masses. We had done that with Tebe, with the Radibusa remix, and we wanted to do a Summertime remix, right? And that's the time where even Timberland with that Aliyah sound. So we stole even brr, brr, with a Planet Fat module, they remember the Planet Fat sounds, right? It was the first time now you had a module with mustard sounds on it. So I wanted a word for the word remix. But we don't have the word remix. We've got the word for mix. So I came up I wanted to say, this is the remix. So I said, this is Motswako.
Right.
But already, Oskido was calling me Motswako. That was my nickname.
Right.
Just go around calling, hey, Motswako, come here, my man. So that stuck. And then I think later that year or the next year, 98, Iggy Smalls, they dropped that 1, 2, can you feel the Motswako? Yeah, Motswako 01. And then now it's this guy literally crystallizing the word Motswako and using it multiple times in the song, going up and down. Double HP somewhere there appears. And what's crazy about Double HP is that when now his album starts blowing up within the label, it's my wife who's taking it on. They're about to give him his clearance. And my wife is like, no, but this is good. You know, with Vusi Liu. She was working just under Vusi Liu there at Thingy.
That's quite an front there. But as we spoke about, actually, we didn't say this here, that this podcast is a partial tribute
To Double HP.
to Double HP. May he rest in peace, and we're going to touch on his story here and there as we go. But now I just want to shift on to my brother over here. He is your OG, right?
Yeah.
Now you in that time, 96, you but maybe 5 years younger than him?
I'm 44.
44, okay, 6 years.
6
okay.
years, yeah. I know, because I know that you've got a few
I'm
numbers on
44
me.
in September, yeah.
Yeah, you got a few numbers on me, and then he's got a lot more numbers.
Yeah, that's my old
You know? Yeah, he's got a full salt and pepper going on now, you know. So it's officialized. It's officialized.
Yeah.
I was already holding it when you guys were. But
Spraying all over the floor.
So here you are, and you watching him, Tebe, amongst a lot of Meftonians.
Yeah.
You know, having this buzz, having this, you know, move, and you know, doing all these tours. Did you know you were an artist at that time, and how was it watching them?
Wow, man. For as long as I can remember, I've always known I'm an artist, right? I've never thought of myself as anything else. Like, I'm talking, I mean, Mo knows, right? Like, as far as from back when we were kids, you know? I've just always had this fascination with not just music, but the creation of it, or getting to know a song and you know, perform it, or, you know. So around the time our older brothers, you know, started doing Top of the Bob Pops, you know, you remember Top of the Pops, right? Top of the Bob Pops was this talent show that used to happen in Mafftown. So this thing was such a big thing around Mafftown that because you couldn't enter unless you are in middle school, meaning you have to be past standard 4. I remember not being able to wait till I pass grade 6 so that I could be in grade 7 so we can start doing Top of the Bob Pops, you know? So I mean, already at that age, you were looking forward to doing something, doing your David Michael Jackson song. And then came a time when our brother Katleho did LL Cool J, I Need Love. That, and just watching him, because I was staying at my aunt's place in Unit 8 at the time, right? So watching him rehearse that thing every day, rewinding the tape, getting the words right, writing them down, for me, that process was engineering something in my head, because not only was I watching him learn the song, I was learning how the song itself was made. Okay, so this guy, there's words that he's using, and they sound alike, but it's not the same words. And, you know, you kind of, as a kid, you're just picking up this thing. And in your head, you're thinking, this is this guy's thing. You don't think this is music.
Right.
So you think this is a LL Cool J thing. So I became obsessed with this LL Cool J song and then I said to Mo, let's. So we all started learning the song after we saw Katli doing it on stage. My mother at the time was station manager at Radio Mabana, and they had gone on a trip.
Please don't forget to add, you know, that you come from a musical family.
Yeah.
So to put it in your father was also a musician as well.
Yeah, like my mother was on radio. She was a radio presenter. She did events also for the radio station, and also ended up becoming the station manager. I think the first black female station manager in South Africa, actually. So you can imagine growing up around all of that, I just was picking up a lot, right? I was picking up a lot about event organizing. I mean, my mother used to host your Brenda Fassies, your Mzwake Bullies, Yvonne Chaka Chaka, Julukas. Some of those guys would sleep at my house. Some of those guys would sleep at my aunt's house.
This is wild, man. I
know?
just know Toady. I just know these people talking about Brenda that was at my house and whatnot.
Yeah.
Sankomo, the Bratsepozula, always.
I ran into Bongani the other day and I was telling him, yo, man, you know, like, I remember in my childhood, your mom being at my house. Like, you know? So that kind of adds to me not ever seeing any option outside of music in my whole life.
Yeah. And then you also had examples ahead of you that were a stone throw away.
Hey, you see what
Stone
you did
throw.
there?
I see. You see what I did there? Your guys featuring me on your stuff, right? You also had those examples of people such to do that. But now you also a graduate of Mabana, right? So you were with people like Papa Joe.
I wouldn't say I graduated, but I took a lot of classes.
Oh, you decided you were finished,
Yeah.
right? You decided. You
Like
decided.
most of us.
Yeah. You know what? I'm one of them. I also
Yeah.
decided it was finished.
Yeah.
So you tell us about that, because it was also a little bit of a culture of that part, you know?
Actually, where I got culturalized into music, was at Mabana. That's where I learned about Charlie Parker, the Yardbird, Thelonious Monk, and, all my favorite, instrumentalist Miles Davis. We learned about all those people. Herbie Hancock, my favorite pianist. So Mabana culturalized me. Before going to music theory school, I just liked music. I just knew I liked music. But what I learned in music theory and learning music as a study was that music is a culture. You need to be culturalized. You need to know who revolutionized what at what point. If you know the story of Charlie Parker, the Yardbird, these were the first black guys to be allowed to record music ever. Ever, right? And it was because they played the flutes and their brass instruments in ways that the orchestra had never played them. I'm talking about the guys that introduced jazz to the world, right? These guys were playing double time at a time when, conductors only went as far as 8th notes or 16th at best.
Listen to the art and technicality of all this, right? But before we get into depth of all that, please don't forget to say that you were also gymnastics, so we can take away your gangster credit. Because my credit is down here somewhere, right? So I need to take somebody down with me.
I mean, I remember Papa Joe, Brapesi,
Brapesi, I did gymnastics as well, man.
Yeah. You know what? They're down here with me now. I feel human now.
But come on, man. There's props to that. I mean, being like next to Tseko Mogotsi.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Right.
That's
Fair
not
enough.
bad.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Tato Murubani, the Murubani brothers. All those guys. Mabana really created, it culturalized you, like I'm saying, So you kind of got into the behind the scenes of things. You kind of got into the history of things. And I'm saying this because we're missing a lot of that now.
Oh, we'll touch on that. We'll touch on all that, paying homage to the OGs, right?
Yeah.
So much so I pay homage to the OGs that there was a bottle that was open. Didn't want to open it, but I'm like, damn, it's my OGs, man. I got to listen to these guys, right? Right. So we'll get into that. And then I want to move over to Mo. Now, to talk about the man, the legend, the guy that's got the balls of steel. I've always admired you. That's why I'm using those things. I've always admired you for your courage and all. But you actually from Ramatabama,
Yes.
I believe so, right?
Yes.
And that's on the border of Botswana.
Yes.
That's like 60 kilometers away.
Yeah, about
So-
30 k's from Mafikeng, the town, yeah.
Right. So how were you Maftonian while being a Boer before Boer became a thing, right? A generational farmer, and
Yeah.
you're from there, but you're still Maftonian and one of the founding members of Morafe.
Thank you, Gaston. To start off, Tori's mother and my mother are sisters. My mother is the older sister.
Okay.
When we were growing up, from the time we were born, I lived on one street, he lived back opposite.
Is this in Mafikeng?
Yes.
Okay.
In Mansiwa. So literally from the year we were born, because we were born in the same year, we were like, do you see what I mean? So I think later at about maybe the age of 5, then my dad built a house on the farm, then we had to move there. So fortunately, they never changed my schooling. I still schooled in town. Then that means now I was more at Tori's house than
Gotcha.
ever.
Gotcha. And so you were there rent-free. That was the good
You see
part.
what I'm saying? Yeah. So literally, for the first maybe 10 years of our lives, we were literally like inseparable.
Did you also know you were a musician at the time?
No. It's because of that environment. But it was also the vibe in Mafftown. We always had a drive for cool. Yeah, like you had to do something to be cool. You had to do something. Something had to define you. Like, for instance, I couldn't go to Mabana because of the timing, because now my mom had to pick me up after school and so on and so on. But there'll be often days when I have to sleep over in town, then I'd go with Tony to Mabana when he's doing his
That's why I
gymnastics.
feel good that I'm more Mabana than he is.
Yeah, no, I'm not Mabana at all. Yeah, but fortunately also, our auntie, which is the three sisters, is my mom, Mantidi and Mantuli, which is his mom. The middle sister, she worked at Mabana. She was managing the toy library. I don't know if you remember the toy library. Yeah, so in the absence of me being at karate, because my brother was at karate and Tuli was there. So in the absence of that, then I would always be there at toy library.
Would have been Papa Joe or Percy Karate?
I don't know.
He would have been Percy
No, because
Karate.
every
Percy,
kid
yeah.
wanted to be something at Mabana. Mabana was the palace of dreams. Yeah. So to not be
I
able
like
to
that.
be
Mabana was a palace of dreams. Because here's the
Yes.
thing is, sorry to interrupt you because you're telling a good story, is that most people don't understand what Mabana was and what the function is. They're hearing the name as we speak, but it was a palace of dreams. That any art of any sort, if you could do a flying kick, you're good. If you could do a backflip, if you could play
Ballroom
a piano.
dancing.
Right.
And champions came out of there.
yeah,
Correct.
Yeah.
international champions.
Yeah, international
Yeah,
champions.
in every field.
Tebogo Kgobokwe, Salome Sechele, Lucas Sinyatswa. Just the list is in.
The list,
Yeah.
Bob Presley.
Talking about
S.T.O.A.N with
Of
gymnastics.
course, Tseko was the poster boy. He could do no wrong.
Speaking of Tebogo Kgobokwe, is he related to Lamo?
It's the older sister.
Yeah.
Is the older sister?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it makes sense because now we get to expressions where we can
Yes.
speak about that a little
Yeah,
bit later.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on from that, given the time, sorry, brother, to cut you, right? Given the time, now we have this thing where the both of you see this OG, he's out there, he's making people dance, the weddings. Back then, the songs were a lot lighter on the ear, right? Before the raps became like heavy about being a wordsmith where, you'd bust those lines is about the rhymes and what's about there's some political, background to it, right? We're looking at these OGs and Mafikeng is now no longer the Puputa Tswana that you guys once remembered. Now you're getting into a new phase.
Yeah.
Somehow the culture didn't die. Although it took a knock,
Yeah.
the culture didn't die.
Yeah.
Tell me, one, what was it looking at the OG? Did he keep y'all guys inspired?
Yeah.
Number two, what was it like in Mafikeng that kept y'all going?
I need to put you in context, which is very important. When you go to the writings of Tekisho Solplaki, which is around about 1899, 1900, this is around about the Anglo-Boer time.
You make it sound like you were born then.
Well, as a historian, you live there, literally.
Gotcha.
So, but Solplaki was coming from Kimberley. He came to Mafikeng to work. Yeah. He came there for work. But then the war breaks out and he starts writing himself, this diary and all that. But going through many of his texts, you get that feeling that you are talking about Mafikeng. Way back then, already. You see, Mafikeng has always been a gentleman's town. Barolongwe wearing suits and working to offices in the early 1900s already. Their own newspapers, these are the people who actually put money together to start even organizations like the ANC, because they were free. They were not in the Transvaal. They were not in the Free State. They were part of the Cape government, and they were advanced, in many ways. So that text of Mafikeng comes a long time ago. It's not a product of Puputa. It's always been there.
It's always been there.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. So Mafikeng was not just a train stop, as most people would try to make it.
Yes.
It was more
But
than that.
It being a train stop made it very culturally advanced, progressive in a way. There were a lot of the British guys were there, the offices there.
The Boy Scouts movement was born in Mafikeng during the siege of Mafikeng with Lord Baden-Powell. So the style of the guerrilla warfare that the Boers used, a lot of it happened around there.
Gotcha.
In terms of the development of that.
So okay, we're looking at that time,
yeah.
and you're moving forward. The whole school was named after Solplaki.
Yeah.
Right. It started as a primary school, then became a high school.
There's a university now, which is good.
Really?
In Kimberley, yeah. So
really? In Kimberley, okay, not in Mafftown, right?
But nonetheless, like I was explaining to you, he's not a Mafftown native.
Yeah, he's a Kimberley.
Yeah, he's a Kimberlite. Well, not necessarily, just outside
what
Kimberley.
They call it, Kimberlite.
Yeah.
Now we know.
Keister.
Keister.
Yeah, Kimberlite is actually, it's a mineral.
It's a mineral, yeah.
Yeah. But in any case, I wanted to relate a particular story. I think it was in 96, there was a bash, I think it was a New Year bash, something, maybe violence broke out, and then it was cancelled, and then there had to be a makeover event, and it was held in the stadium, Kemonoso Stadium, what is now known as Mafikeng Stadium, inside, and I think it was a free event, so I got a chance to go there.
How old are you at that time? Like 96,
96.
you're probably 14?
Yeah, 14, 15.
Okay.
So at this time, Kwaito is really taking off. But at the same time, like Tori's been giving you like a background that now we are influenced by American hip hop. These are two worlds apart. These two schools, they don't meet anywhere. To a point that anybody else who's in the rapping business or hip hop business at that time knows hip hop as something that's English. Because being able to communicate in English then was something. It meant something to people, I suppose, I don't know. But then we're dealing with these really polarized ideas. There's hip hop and then there's Kwaito, and Kwaito was taking off in a way that we had never experienced before that. Because, Mafikeng was a really hip-hop town. We grew up on DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. We grew up on Tone Loc.
Heavy D.
Heavy D and the Boys, you know what I mean? The only South African, we had Bubblegum, but Brenda's, they've always been Maftown and so on. But we were the generation that was really exposed to that early Family Matters, lifestyle. Cosby, you know what I mean? So when Kwaito comes, it comes with such a bang. It's 100% on radio every day. It occupies the whole space. Now,
and it's mostly in Zulu.
It's mostly in Zulu. Yeah, but it's localized in any sense. Né? So on that particular day, I always say this, and I remember it because it's important in our journey. When on that particular day, I remember everybody was having fun in the stadiums. Boom, 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 boom. Bongo Maffun was on the lineup. And I went backstage and, there were the barriers and so on. Yeah, so I'm standing on the barriers. I'm looking at the minibuses that these guys were traveling in because, back in the day, they used to travel in crews. Like the whole Kalawa would be out, the whole 999 would be out. It would be like 4 or 5 buses or a big bus, and they'll be coming in and out, changing because they had outfits, and there will be a whole lifestyle backstage, and I'm sitting there backstage and I'm looking at the lifestyle. I'm trying to fathom, like where I am and where these people are, because it was a whole lifetime away. You know what I mean? So it's not even a point where I could say, hey, Stonito! You know what I mean? Because I'm a kid, but in any case, I stood there, I think, almost the whole night trying to soak in, you know what I mean? What it meant to be what S.T.O.A.N and them were doing back then. It is in this time, and I always say, I think the following year was the same year, 96. That's when Raga Gong came out. That's Bongo Maffun's first album. That was the very first time I went and bought a recorded product in store. I think I bought it on tape. The tape, I gave it to Mimo some time ago. But when I got that tape and I put it in my record and I played it, I knew that we were onto something. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, like it really confirmed to me that in time we are on the right track towards where we want to go. Because what Bongo Maffun was doing at that time was different to anything else that had been done in the Kwaito area, in the Kwaito arena. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. Yeah. Actually, it's an interesting concept because I can relate to it in terms of that moment when I realized, you know what? I actually have a chance. There's a time where you're doing something and you have a hope and a dream. But there is a time where you have a confirmation that I actually might be capable of producing something of quality that even might surpass the person who has the chance right now. Because with us, with the Inedible Karamo and Prophets of the City, and when we were listening to what we were doing on our demos, we were like, hey, wait,
there's something here. There's something here.
Yeah.
You know what
Could
I
that
mean?
be partially why that although Bongo Maffun existed, people knew your name?
Oh, no, but I think it's key because of just how the group was formed. That it's almost like a collective of very individualistic entities. So the group is made up of a collection of followings. My following with Taniswa's following with Speedy's people and Just Seed's people, and they kind of come together in this. There's very few overlaps. Of those people. So we bring our audience. If one person leaves, like we haven't been performing with Tandiswa, and I'm willing to bet my left nut that a significant part of her core audience is not going to our shows, simply because she's not performing with us on stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this does sound like, although it's a partial tribute to HHP, I think this is also a tribute to the OG here.
Yeah,
Right?
the OG.
There's a large part of it. There's a tribute to you and the influence that you have for everybody from Mafftown then going forward. Because if we see it this way, that you are generation 1, they're generation 2, right? My generation overlaps theirs to generation 3, right? And to bring that into context, Casper, Fifi are generation 4, right? So you influence all those people. So let's fast forward for the interest of time. Say, boom, you leave Mafikeng. You guys are buzzing now. You guys are going to Mega City. You guys are going to the corners in one of the units, and having your cipher session, freestyle session, having the hip hop. Jaba is 2 years away from leaving to St. Albans.
Yeah.
Tell me about that time. Like, give me a bit of that vibe.
Look, Jaba
What years are
specifically-
these?
This is like 97, 98.
Yeah, 96, I think. Somewhere I'm in high school. I see this video. This guy, I see this fat guy on this video. They say he's from.
He says like he's skinny.
But he was always he became big now.
He became big.
He was small.
Before he's gonna beat me up. I'm sorry.
Jaba was always the fat guy.
That's true.
So anyway, he's taking his clothes off. He's rapping in some house. He just looks weird. But it's 96. Hip hop is just weird. This is the birth of verbal assassin. Jaba, we went to the same primary school. It was just one of those, just another guy. Because in Mafikeng, everybody was a superstar. You know what I mean? There's nothing special about what he was doing, except Tony, because Tony, they were big.
They
with
were
the ladies.
stars. They were stars already. They were
You know what I'm
actual
saying?
cemented stars.
But before they left for Joburg to become stars, they were stars in Mafftown. I'll tell you a funny story. We wanted to come up with the name Jaba. And Vosilio says, I like your style, my man. A bit of hip-hop, bit of panzola. Yeah, I think it works. And Jaba was like, you're crazy, man. What kind of name is that? Hip-hop panzola is so cool. Like, really?
Yeah, it's so corny.
The day
And it's stuck.
he went to OK Bazaar to go buy his album because somebody told him it's out. Right. He ran there to go buy it, and when
Who told her that?
Yo,
They were doing that to us all the time, though. Sorry. They were doing that to us all the time, though. Like, you would have a track list. Okay, guys, please name these songs. Their song is named. Our album Concerto.
Yes.
It was Bongo Maffun Concerto in Digong Minor.
Yes.
Ne?
Yes.
They just said Concerto.
That was that. On that note, actually, Jaba was somebody, his name is Jabalani.
Yes.
So that's where the name Jaba came
comes
from, right?
Yes.
So what would happen is that every time, I met him years later in Johannesburg, and, I call him Jaba. He would appreciate that. It's like, thank you for not calling me double HP. You call me.
Yeah.
It's like, fortunately, I know you before.
Or HHP.
Or HHP, right?
We are here with HHP.
Yeah.
But like just to add a little bit of a context from the other side. So they are in the cocoon in Mafftown, right? And Poch. I'm in Klerksdorp for a little bit, right? But we are hearing there's like a buzz about them, especially him. We heard about there was this little kid called Toady. He's rapping and he's doing things, Jaba, I discovered him on TV.
Brown would always host these guys that would be working with or for contractors for the SABC. So this one time, Matt Hatter, this guy from the States, is there, and we all just rapping. DRM is there, we all rapping for him. I think that weekend they were heading to Joburg, and they were going to be hanging with Kalawa. So I kind of remember the actual weekend
Weekend,
that he left, and I knew because of the bars that we had left with them. I knew that I was going to be spoken of in Joburg. And today I'm sitting here full circle, and Stoan is saying, man, we used to hear about Tody.
And that's important for the kids to know to use your moments. Because these kids, man, some of them, their egos are here, and he wants to take poses at a time where he should be taking his moment. You never know. It might not be me, but I might talk to someone about you. And that might be your dream come true.
Yeah.
Pause. My moment is please ask Mosquito to come here.
Oh, okay.
That's my moment. That's my moment. Yeah.
You know, but speaking of which, you know, you had movements, Sabotolamo, like expressions, and you had Lefoko with Botainoko and them. These are movements that brought us.
Shout out to Tulamo,
Yeah.
somebody I've known personally, and he's also put me on his stage.
Yeah, these movements are the movements that taught, you know, artists like Bofi, Fibo, Casper, you know, and all the guys that came from that era. This professionalism that they still show to this day. You know, expressions was that. Expressions, you had to perform live. That means you had to be well rehearsed. You know, Kolifoko, that was Motswako Leicester's competition. That was like battle every day.
That so just to make it clear that expressions was more formal. That happened in Mabana, and Lefuko was more informal.
Informal, yeah.
Right, and that would happen anywhere, anytime. But it
The-
had a
the-
structure.
The station
anyway.
was actually the headquarters were at Zondi's flat, and we had actually negotiated this space with.
See, that's the
Zondi.
problem with being an OG, right? You're leaving all the young ones to do their thing. You weren't there.
Yeah.
So now this is where we take over, right?
But what's crazy is that the model is the same. We used to gather up at Bruce's flat doing similar things,
Right.
you know, where before we record the ciphers, because there's a Cold War as well, you know.
A Cold War, I like
there's
that.
a Cold War, you know, like there's one of you who always comes with it. And I remember L Skills was that for us with LG. Yeah.
You know, on that note, because Tody was given the whole talk about moving it to the expressions and whatnot, and I think one of the parts that Tody left out because of time, right? I think off camera we try to push, you know, to go quick. We cannot leave Kulie out of this because that was one name that we didn't mention out of all this, and out of the superstars that came out, because we had a lot of stars that came out. But one of the earliest superstars, we could say Jaba, and the second superstar after that was Kulie.
Actually,
I would say Dukes.
funny story. No, actually, funny story. Yes, Dukes came before.
Yeah, with that.
And- Yeah, and
Yeah, but
remember
in
he picked
oh,
up
yeah,
the
in terms-
summers. He was
yeah.
the first Motswako lister to pick up that summer for best rap album.
Who's this?
Dukes.
Dukes, yeah.
Yeah, that's very important to mention. But shortly after that, Kulie came, and what's one of your fun facts about Kulie Chana's career is that he didn't want to go solo. KG and I kind of tricked him.
That's you tricked him.
Yeah,
That's
right?
interesting because if there's one of the few people in entire South Africa that had the X factor, Kulie was one of them. And how did you not want to
But
go
I,
solo?
I saw it before anyone. Actually, everybody thought I was gonna come out the
Okay,
first solo.
tell
of
me
Morafe,
more.
You know, because in interviews I'd be the one talking, and I was
He's
the
the
producer.
producer,
You know, so it was kind of a no-brainer. But what was happening behind the scenes was every time we got off stage, Kulie was the one that stayed and made friends. KG and I wanted to go home and sleep. You know, I mean, how we met Slicker and them, the Squatter Boys, how we met people in the industry, right up to AKA. Kulie was the social one.
I see.
You know what I'm saying?
I see.
So I saw it from that perspective. I was like, man, you need to come out solo because
Gotcha.
I don't have, I want to fall behind the scenes.
So
Mo knows-
Kulie is the person that got particularly famous, right? So he came out to Johannesburg and whatnot, and you decided not to take the fame. What about KG? Why did he not decide to move
KG
forward?
at the same time, so KG and I made this decision together about Kulie, right? Because KG was already working with Jaba's band.
And this is the time he decided to ditch Morafe.
No, it was long
after.
after.
Okay.
Long after, because he had already released.
So he was at the time where, like, the original phase, like in the 90s when he decided to leave.
No, I didn't leave. I left like a year before Morafe released the first album.
2004, yeah. Yeah. KG was the first one to get busy amongst all of us because he was already working with Jaba's band. He was helping direct Jaba's band.
The advantages of being the vocalist.
Yeah, right. So it was Kulie and I thinking, okay, what are we gonna do? And I thought, you know what? I'll figure it out. Let me get you on. So we forced Kulie to do the solo track, and he had already done with Notende. So that was another thing that was like, yo, man, there's people that like you for this song. There are people that know you for this song and don't even know Morafe at the time, right? So I'm pushing him to do this thing, and then we do Futumata which I then give to Slicker to put on his Ventilation mixtape. Because he was doing a tour.
Right.
Yeah.
Shout out to Slick. And this is 2005, 6-ish, right?
Nah, 2008, actually.
Much later, okay.
Yeah,
oh,
much
Ventilation 1 came out 2005, so you're talking about Ventilation 2.
2, yeah. The one that Sprite joined.
Gotcha.
So he was doing a tour.
I know my shit. I was there. So Squatter and I at the level.
No, I got you. I went like I'm floating with you. Like,
finally, I keep the OG quiet. Ooh, I feel good. I feel good. Yeah.
So around that time, Slicker's doing this tour, and I'm like, you know what? This tour is a good platform for this guy to be known, because we didn't have a vehicle to get Kulie out there. So I had to think on my toes. I A&R'd that whole Motswako Originator album. Found the beats, you know, Your No More Hunger. I mean, the stories are crazy. The No More Hunger, I wrote that song with JR. Kulie just came later on and laid his parts. And that's why you listen to the song. It sounds like JR and I are more musical. Kulie just comes in to do the verse. So you know, and to come to the point that Motswako has always taken from Motswako. Motswako has always grown.
That's a
from
deep line. Motswako always took from Motswako.
Yeah, Motswako has always grown from Motswako. Motswako has always taken from Motswako. That's why Jaba took us in, but we never necessarily got signed to where he was signed. Like Motswako always had this thing of Kefahoro Ofe, you know. Like
so to the Jaba part, I want to take a couple of steps back to my brother over here. So what I understand is that I did an interview with Fifi Cooper, right? And she was your hype lady. And Casper was doing a lot of Lefikeng as well, because I think, from what I understand, right, and this is not what he told me, this is more what the others told me, is that he was more comfortable with Lefikeng than he was with expressions, right? And Fifi Cooper was one of the people that was your, we can't say protege, but your hype lady, right? So what was it like that you were the guy that was popular, and then 2010 comes down as like Mafftown Heights? How was it like grooming these people, you know, to bring them out to stage? And please mention Tulama in the process.
Going back to what Tony's alluding to, because I'm here. In our early days, in the 90s already, when we were doing TDK dubs, we were already doing solos. So as youngins, we were coming up, because when we were coming up, it was, Tony's always been in music. He had a lot of bands. He started a lot of bands with a lot of people. But because I was a constant in his life, all the time we would gravitate back to each other. Especially when we went to boarding school. When I come back on the holidays, all we do is our music. And at that time, that's when we only met with Tony and KG. Though we are related, but it's only later in life that we hook up with Tony and KG, with Kulie and KG, and become Morafe. It was just the L tribe before Jaba. But even in that time already, we were doing solos. We were actually very sure at that time that all four of us could have successful solo careers.
Okay.
Yes.
So you guys were independent before independent was a thing. That now I want to speak about the part where you, to some degree, to a very large degree, influenced the people that came after you, like your Fifi Coopers. Like, give us that story.
Yeah, I mean, to answer that shortly, the point I was making to you was that Kulie only released his solo album, say 2010.
Correct.
But it had been in a long time making. I don't know what you mean.
No, I do know what you mean, because before Most Anticipated was a thing, Kulie was probably 5-year Most Anticipated.
For a long time.
We didn't even know if he was actually going to drop that album.
Even before Morafe came out, his solo was long anticipated.
And it's a lesson about a lot of musicians that you come across, that a lot of people see the come up. I mean, see the blow up, but they don't see the come up. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, you go through a lot of things. You're in this group, then you're in that group, then, you know, you come out.
I want to highlight what you said. Everyone sees the blow up, but they don't see the come up.
Yeah.
That line, please consider. That's a very important line.
Yeah, but put that aside. When we talk about the next generation, whatever number generation it is, we must give all the credit to Botolam. Because through expressions, you know, I was there when Lefikeng was formed. I was physically there with Botan when we were coming up with the whole concept. Although I don't take credit for it, they put it together. During that very period of time, Tolamo, what they were doing with expression, because you know what Tolamo was training producers. And those producers were producing the students he was training. And then you would have to, at the beginning of the month, go to Tolamos, do your song, fix it, do it again. Then when it's done, it's recorded, you have to rehearse it. Now he's training the engineers at the same time, those who are doing the music. And then after you do that, there's Boshuga and Botlami who are doing the dancing and the routining and stuff.
Let's not forget Jazz Brown, because he was in the
Jazz
process.
was also
It
there.
was in the studio.
Jazz was the part production, Libawani and all that. And then afterward, there will be like the choreography part of it. At the end of the month, when they put up a show, you are putting up the whole thing that you have done right through the month. So that's how intense that program was. It was more intentional. Lefoko at that time was more popular because it was more freestyle. People just got up there and did whatever they want. Correct. You know what I mean? And it was good for street culture. But it's just how they happened at the same time. But Tolamo was literally in training. And the result of that is the album I did with Tolamo, which was my second album. Because when I got there, I found a working machine. So I took the producers from there, I took artists from there, I took choreography, I took management from there. Everything was in working. All I needed to do was just find myself there and work. And this is how Fifi come into the picture. Casper would already met him with Tumelo earlier on and so on, but he had already been coming through that program already. You know what I mean? So I would not take any of that credit because it was literally what Botolamo and Jazz were busy doing at that time. Those 3-4 years that they were doing that program, it was very important. And I think for a longer time, the institution Mabana and others, they tried to get Tolamo back into doing it again, but for whatever reason, he just lost it.
There's moments where, without I think being very antagonistic and blaming people, but let's say speak about what the need is. The need is for leadership to have willingness, and that willingness is the purse, right? But also the mindfulness to make sure that whatever is designated for that particular function is spent on functions that are going to move the needle. Right now, we are paying people salaries and not much is happening. And it's very key that you have people that are passionate about these kids, first of all, that, Tolamo, when you hear him, I didn't know that about Tolamo. I know Tolamo is a guy, dreadlocks.
He's slightly younger than
Sakra
you. He's
dude.
5 years.
Yeah.
And that back then, that 5 years is big.
Yeah, he's older guys, ne? His older brother, his siblings are the ones that are my peers. Dailo and Teboho. Yeah, Dailo was a karate guy.
Yeah.
And Teboho was ballroom dancing. And so I knew him from the time I knew him. He was
with Tolamo, I was actually at Expressions once before. Once I came back to Mafikeng years, probably a decade later, I was there myself.
Yeah, man. So you now hear, this is the advice I give kids when I'm like, keep your team and develop your team from the formative stages, where, if you guys are making music in university, I hope your friend is studying business. The other friend is studying law.
Yes.
In the crew, accounts.
Highlight again. Did you hear that? While one person is having the talent, someone else is doing the other stuff. Someone is doing law. Someone is doing business.
Yes.
I'm so sorry, OG, for disturbing you. Please forgive me, but I had to highlight that.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So you start seeing why these guys, even despite the fact that the music career at its pinnacle did not last that long, are still vital today. It's because behind that there's a solid foundation. In terms of, first of all, your associations, but yourself as well. That's why Jim Rohn says, work harder at yourself than you do at your job. Develop yourself more than you develop the hours that you're spending on your job while developing someone else's dream, because this is the dream.
With Tolamo, I actually just tapped into what they were already doing. And that was at the peak of what they were doing. I mean, I used to sit there at Unit 2, watch what we're doing, and it was amazing, the energy and the commitment they had to put to make that thing happen. But it just so happens that in the time that we did Mafikeng album Motswako, then I also met with Tolamo, whose parents already moved on the farm, and he and Taelo had already were doing farming a little bit, but he was still interested in the arts. But after the year or year and a half or 2 years we spent together, I really influenced them to say, screw this art thing. He just dumped everything and went 100% cabbages.
And
and he and Sugar got married. Yeah, they got married and took up farming.
While we on that,
till today.
right?
So
shout
it
out
is
to
what it
Tulamo
is.
for that. He was supposed to be here. He was supposed to be in the back, but he didn't make it, right? Also, somebody who was supposed to be here was Towdeemac.
Yes.
So, Tody, I hear you make beats, right? I know you make beats. Please make sure that you make me a beat. And I want to put a diss track to him. So you gonna be on it?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, you gonna be on the diss track?
You know what would be dope?
Yeah.
What would be dope? Like on a serious tip, though.
Yeah.
Like the podcast, but on a masterclass with these kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Creating a song while talking through it. Through the hours.
As long as it's a diss track to Tasso for not coming.
So,
Yeah.
Udi.
Yeah. I think a lot of the times we also don't give him his flowers.
Yeah.
Because,
let's give him his flowers.
when we met Tasso, when I say me, I mean Morafe. We needed to work music. Tony was already producing by that, but we didn't have a studio. We didn't have a place to work. And it just so happens that Kulie, because he's the socializer guy, he was friends, Libo, Tupac. What's his name?
Tupac from Muff.
Yeah,
There's a Tupac was
Max, Max and Bo Udi, they were around the same circle. Kulie knew them, and eventually then it led us to Tasso. When we met Tasso, he was still staying, I think, in Unit 12.
Did Udi ever become dope?
Who?
Udi.
Udi was working with Tasso.
Yeah, but did he ever become dope?
Yeah, they were dope at that time. They were dope.
Why did he become? No, he started off. He was a privileged kid, man.
So Tasso was working with them, but he had a group called Makadusi. They were doing Kwaito and all. But he was working on a sequencer. He had a small little sequencer like this. He sat flat on the floor. He didn't even have a bed in his room. It was just blankets in the corner, and he used to sit like a karate guy and ding 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 on this thing of his, But the day we met with Tasso and sat down and started blowing up, he bought into our idea 150%. Because that time he was selling beats. You could just go and Tasso would make a beat for 150 or whatever.
Yeah, I was about to say it was those 200 rand beats.
Yes, anybody was going to Tasso. But when he met with us, he made a conscious decision like, you know what?
Investment working with these guys.
I'm working with these guys. I hear where they're going. And the genius of Tasso, through time, through Morafe, through HHP and all that, through Dukes and so on, is because he has the genius to interpret what you were thinking. You know what I mean?
There's a funny thing happening with these 4 guys that I think have been really, really instrumental in the overall. Maybe you could even put a 5th one in the overall landscape and a profile of South African music and the artists that kind of suckled out of where they were. Bruce Sibito, ne? Tasman, Mandla Spikiri, Towdeemac, and Kabza the Small. They all look the same. First of all, there must be something.
Yeah,
small,
think about it, right?
motherfuckers with Momkaba. And there is this similarity between even their personalities, everything about it.
The approach,
the guys that influence the industry like that. Because Bruce Joe, a whole generation.
Yeah.
Like a whole section of the generation.
We missed an opportunity to tap into the energy of Bruce back then. If we had been able to tap into Bruce in the
exact same thing. You know that twisting the threads while working. One
that's
foot
them.
Up, 1 foot up, solving a problem. He's more speaking.
I'll tell you one thing. My biggest influence as a music producer, Mandla speaking. I'll tell you why. Before there was a song, Keep Your Hands Ready, that's Dr. Dre. Ding dong, ding.
93, right? 93 Chronic, yeah?
And then there was a Nina song Ding Dong.
Yeah.
And
I didn't even connect it like that.
Oh, wow,
yeah.
yeah. Right.
I remember
You
about
too,
DJ
right?
Q.
Yeah. Shout out to Spikiri. Now, here's the thing is that, unfortunately, I've not met him, and I wouldn't say that I was influenced by him per se. However, I know his influence has been blanketed through and through, right? For me, he reminded me of Prodigy, of Mobb Deep. There was something about him and Prodigy that was, a lot alike. Musically and also stylistically, he had a certain swag about him.
Bruce was Jermaine Dupri, you know.
That's actually a good analysis, yeah.
And then, Oskido, I would give him Dre.
Havoc, actually.
Yeah, Oskido, I would give him Dre because Oskido really wasn't playing, but he would tell you the bass line to play. Just it's amazing, man. Like I think I'm always like mind blown by seeing both Tody and them because it tells me that music is in great hands. Guys like Bomo, he's doing what he's doing with his serious part of life, but he hasn't left music. Yes, all of us have kind of relegated the releasing part to the backseat, right? There's things that we do to feed our kids every day. But what that's done is also to restore our love for music because you will hate music if it's not giving you, if it's not feeding you and you're depending on it.
Correct.
It disappoints you time and time again.
Okay, let me say something out of you. Out of everybody here, you are definitely part of the C's, right? You're definitely part of the engineering, but you're definitely one of my biggest influence. I got a big mouth, and one of the few reasons why I have a big mouth is hearing people like you.
Yeah.
I don't know how Jaba gave you a possibility for you to have that big mouth on his tape, right? Because he was very politically correct. He's not confrontational, but he gave you that.
Oh, he was very confrontational.
Confrontational in the background. In the background, but not in the foreground.
To your face. Well, he wasn't doing it to the media. But if he met you and he had issues with you, he was going to tell you were going to know.
Jaba loved me.
He could come to your show.
He didn't love him.
No. He was going, no. He's actually out of these kids.
Uh-huh.
He's the one who came the first time. He says, I'm hearing debates about where this thing started. Listen, Banyela.
No, he was a hell of a pundit. Yes.
No. Jaba was a straight shooter to the point of, like Kanye. Jaba was Kanye without the crap. You know what I'm saying? But everything else. Like saying, I'm great. I am. Yeah.
But that's a different type of mouth.
Get into a public space with a ski mask and then go and sit like this. And everybody's like, who's this guy now? And then it's like, no, it's Jaba.
I didn't see that part with no shoes on.
Bro, that was it. At Kulie's show, walks in with an entourage. Okay, Kulie. He's looking for Kulie all over the place. This is Kulie's show. Kulie's event.
Well, shout out to Jaba because the thing is, some of these things, he was just so cool. Jaba's 5 years older than I am. But, something you guys don't know. YBA2NW at Club 55 Pretoria.
Yes.
There was some of those shows.
Wednesday.
Yeah, because I didn't live far from there. He was the one that says from time to time.
He was the realest.
A lot of the stars around that time, I met him. But moving on to him, so we can close the show with a couple of things, is that I took from you the factor to not to be scared. You were brave. You're brave as hell.
Yeah.
My dad kind of like describes me as somebody who's brave.
Yes.
And I describe you as someone who's brave. So I took that from you.
Yeah.
Right? So I will give you that compliment. I'll give you that flowers for what it's worth. Yeah. And I think it started off as a tribute to Jaba, and now it's a tribute to all of you, and including people. I want to give a shout out to Kulie. I want to give a shout out to Fifi. I want to give a shout out to KG. I've never met KG. I want to give a shout out to Casper. I want to give a shout out to Prof, who I've never met. Yeah. Shout out to L Skills.
Blacksmith.
Right. And Tooks, I've only spoken to him over the phone. I've not met him in person. Shout out to all these people, because one thing I know about Mafftown is that the generation is not just a generation in terms of chronological order. Each generation supported every generation. Every generation knew who was coming next. Yeah. And shout out to everybody who partaken. From Morafe.
And shout out to the new generation as well.
We will get to there, right? So I think you guys will do a better.
Brilliant.
But they got their shine later.
No, never made it at all.
Yeah, your Easy Labs, your
Easy Lab, you really made
G-Snap. You know,
No, those are new kids.
what is
I'm talking
that-
about
that-
Tuzi and-
Yeah, Tuzi. Guys like
Yeah.
Tuzi.
What's that guy we spoke about the other
guys
day?
like GK Dudes. Guys, I mean,
GC,
we can go
GC
back.
is also
I don't
there.
even know these guys.
GC.
Yeah,
What's this from
GC,
the,
right?
Tisser as well.
Yeah, Tessa.
They had moments,
he's
yeah.
still rapping.
Right.
But
Kitty Cat.
LG.
Yeah, well, Kitty Cat. Yeah, but there are a lot of guys.
But
who-
Stacy and
Yes, there are a lot of kids who had potential to go.
I mean,
Producers.
yeah,
Let's give producers also their shine. Jazz Brown.
Fun.
Cozy.
Cozy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are many kids who could have gone on and
Cozy,
but
man.
yeah, that's
Cabo
Cozy.
Jaga
Cozy the
came in a
producer,
little
Yeah,
bit.
Cozy the
Yeah.
producer. Yeah.
Cabo Jaga came in a
but,
little bit,
TC,
you know,
uh,
TC, yeah.
TC, yeah.
It's the roll of the dice, you know.
Yeah,
Life
yeah.
is like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's the roll.
There's
of
a
the
lot of
dice.
luck involved.
Yeah, there's a lot of luck
When
involved.
opportunity meets
It's
you
not
being
mean
prepared.
that because we got a little bit because we're better than everybody. No, it's just the roll of the dice, you know. So many people who would have gone on to achieve greatness. But what makes Jaba stand out is even this bravery you're talking about. I mean, that song that he released, that thing was never supposed to be released. It's him. Who
It was his bravery.
whole thing. It's him. Who
Like
was
a couple of minutes
Yeah.
after his song was
Let me
finished.
tell you, before we go, my first album for it to come out, Jaba went to EMI when it was still here on Greyston and told them, after I released that folk of song, it was banned on the SABC and nobody wanted to touch me. I was staying with Wotodi at that time. Over a year, my song was the biggest in the country and nobody wanted to touch me. You know, and it was Jaba's responsibility, you know, and he was still a young cat. We were like 25 at the time. He went to EMI and told them, I'm not releasing if you don't release this guy. And they said to him, we don't know this cat. We don't care about him. This is your career. You've been working for this. And he said to them, at no point are you getting an album from me if you don't release my cat.
That is some serious bravery.
Okay?
You know?
They had to call me in and say, look, where's that album? Where's the sleeve? And what happened?
Shout out to
6
Jaba.
months
That
down the
power.
lane,
Yeah.
both me and Jaba were nominated for the best rap album. They didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Okay, they were not on that at all.
Mm.
Okay, so there was Jaba's
Yeah.
because he put himself at risk to bring competition
To himself.
to himself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Actually, you know, on that note, because what I wanted to say is that each of us here, because this is tribute to YBA2NW, for those that understand it, know it. If you don't know it, right? He said his pieces about Jaba taking the risk to put him on, and he did. You know, not only from a track, a hidden track, but down to his songs as well. My part that I want to say, and I want to keep it short, is that, you know, Jaba gave me opportunities that I was living in Pretoria, and the YBA2NW Club 55, that was him. Yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, he doesn't get to see this, but I know his kids get to see this. I understand that he influenced even me. Yeah. Someone you're probably going to know for the very first time. Shout out to you, and a lot of other things. As a matter of fact, just a short story, how I met Casper was Jaba came to my radio station, Planet Radio TV, I was the co-builder of that. And he sent Casper to me. Casper just came to my office and said, Jaba sent me here, right? 6 months later, it blew. I'm not taking credit for him blowing up, but, you know, he sent it to me to try and see what I can do with that. Jaba, you gave me opportunities and so much more, and I hope that legacy is understood through children and children before. So as I pass it over to Mr. OG Stoan and Tony, please just give that tribute, say what you got to say to them as we close this off.
My man Gaston, I think, you know, it's generational, and we are all links in the chain of time, and the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. And like I said, the game is really in great hands. Thank you for having us, and just for us to ventilate some of these subjects and discussions and just, you know, recollections of what might be a perspective that's different to other people. So I'm open to having other people come through and really express their own perspective on what they've learned. But, you know, we want to thank you, brother. We want to thank Jaba, because Jaba really, out of all of us, is the common factor through the generations, because through his inspiration, I was able to start writing better raps. You know, through the and all of my youngsters, you know, there are things that I take from them. These guys say Tswana words in English, You know, it sounds like American accent, but saying a Setswana word. You know what I'm saying? And then you're able to expand your rhymes and stuff. So we want to thank all of you guys, but our ancestor now, Jaba, rest in peace, brother. Your memory, I hope that you are really in peace, knowing that we think of you every day, we dream of you, and you continue to inspire us. And even today, as we sit here, we're sitting here in your name, and we hope that, man, your spirit walks with us and we're able to gain more victories as the future comes at us. My 50th birthday, in the next coming week, in a week's time, is really a special time for reflection, where we get more into our humility, but still recognize that we are made in God's image. So we must stand up and walk as such.
I'm going to close it with something that Jaba always complained about, that I feel we should take seriously now as Motsakolistas more than ever. Jaba was one person who was always developing somebody. He took in a Mojo, he took in Casper, he took us in. Even towards his passing, there were artists that were still working with him, that after his passing just fell to the wayside. There's a kid called Mopeme, Prince Mopeme, he was working with. There's a kid called VI that he was working with. There's a girl by the name of Isis he was busy working with. There was, I think her name is Zinzi Kanish. She's I'm a piano DJ now. She left rap. But he was working with Bo Mahenza. There were kids that he was still working with just before he passed, and those kids have been left like in the wind. I mean, I check in with them. They're doing other things now, but they really appreciate that, I check in with them. But there's one other thing that Jaba used to say whenever somebody would complain that, yeah, you're not putting us on. You guys, there's another event, you're not putting us on. Jaba would always say, there's too many Motswako listers, not enough Motswako event organizers. But I really want to echo what Jaba always complained about. We don't have enough Motswako producers, concert producers, We don't have Motswako event organizers. We don't have enough Motswako platform creators. We need platform creators for Motswako, not just the guys that want to come and get the platform, but the guys that actually created.
To close us off, I just want to give a shout out to those people that I still remember. And if you are part of the people I'm supposed to shout out to and don't remember, please understand that it's at the moment that I've forgotten. Your Jazz Browns, your Hauhelo, who was my actual neighbor, and Refillware, someone I looked up to, and so much more. Who am I missing here so that I don't nobody be mad at me?
So rest in peace, DJ Zondi.
Yeah, DJ Zondi.
Played a big
Lection. We got to give Lection also. Yeah, Lection. Lection. I've used these studios before. Lection has opened up his studios for me.
Hash One.
Yeah.
They've been doing important things.
Let's speak about Hash One quickly. Hash One brought us together. Let me say this, guys. This whole Motswako resurgence that you're seeing right now.
Motswako Republic.
Motswako, actually, Hash One made the first effort to bring all of us together on an album called Tenasu, and they did it. And that album I will forever celebrate as one of the greatest efforts to bring us all back together.
Shout out,
big shout out.
So let's give shout out to Tidi, although she's from Littenberg. Shout out to KB.
Yeah.
As well, shout out to Tebe. We didn't mention his name, although we mentioned in the podcast.
All
we
the
didn't
DJs
give him a shout out.
Push Motswako out there, Ginger Flame.
Green Fingers.
Yeah. I spoke to him for the first time yesterday.
Yeah.
Shout out to everybody.
Also, let's always remember to give love to Botswana because
Voska. Now there's a whole nother Zuska.
We gotta give you
the individual.
Yes.
When Motswako had no
love
a platform,
they gave us love first.
They are the ones who.
Yeah.
Motswako actually, Botswana gave
as a country with their artists. Yeah.
Morafe first blew up in Botswana with songs that South Africa doesn't even know.
In South Africa,
and they continue to love the classics.
Absolutely nothing. Yeah. We went to Botswana, I think, 99 or 2000. And for the first time we arrived in, there was a convoy of cars. Everybody came out in the hood with their nice car to come, and we were booked in hotels. We didn't even have a demo.
Bruh, let alone an album.
You know what I mean?
So Botswana showed Motswako love, which is why the Motswako Republic tour is big. We are doing the first big leg in Gaborone on the 28th of June.
What I'm saying is that I wanted to give a big shout out to Gaborone, to Botswana for really giving us support when nobody else did. You know, Motswako became what it did on the back of Gaborone. You know, they held us up. They taught us to be superstars. You know, they gave us the confidence to come to Joburg with our heads held up. You know, so big up to Gabs, all those guys. Who's that cat called Gabs FM?
Towdeemac, yeah.
Towdeemac has held us up for the last 25 years. You gotta give him love. So second to that, big up to Pitori. When Motswako was coming up, and you know YBA Wednesdays started off in Sunnyside.
Yeah.
That's where
Club
Motswako was
55,
really
yeah.
till today.
I'm so proud of that moment because I was
Yeah.
there. I got to meet a lot of the
It's
stars, your
because-
pros.
You know, and
You-
Jaba lived in Joburg, but he
Yeah,
started this
but
in Pretoria.
Pretoria,
Yeah,
yeah.
because Pretoria has always been buzzing.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? Till today, Bozebelebe, Kopeli, Koshosha, Komamelodi, Motswako has always had a base in Pretoria. And from that, you can see the new superstars coming out of Pretoria, Bolatinova, 25K. These are influences to Motswako. You know what I mean? And there's always been mainstream versus Motswako, as if Motswako was like an unwanted
antithesis.
stepchild. You know what I mean?
The underground
Yeah,
Wu-Tang.
but the reality is Motswako is the grounding of hip-hop in our community. It talks our language. It tells our stories.
Motswako listers don't walk around with stripper outfits.
We
does
don't
that-
behave. We don't change our
Motswako listers
behavior.
don't walk around with
to
stripper
fit in.
outfits.
And so for us Moto people, please
Fifi
explain
Cooper
to that.
doesn't do that.
No.
Fifi Cooper is a lady.
Yes.
Is a lady.
Motswako
the
is
first lady.
cultured.
The strength is Motswako.
Yeah, his strength is the rap. It's not
It's a
the
culture. That's why it's really culturally moving.
Shout out.
We have never had a bad rap because our music is grounded in our culture, and that's why Motswako, more than it being a music, we took hip hop, we took kwaito, we took house,
jazz, soul
all
music.
these influences.
So
and
exactly
brought
what
them
it means,
to our
Motswako.
culture.
A mix.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? And that's why every Motswako lister is always found expression in the simplicity of our lives. None of us are killers. None of us are like
And that's not what we're rapping about.
overtly affluent. We have never had Bentleys to floors and whatever. Our stories have always been grounded in our simplicity.
I don't like
And
this
that's the
guy
beauty
for the
of-
last party saying because he just cut me out the whole mace, right? I don't like that one bit. Now just messing with you, homie. And thank you so much, you guys, for being here. And I'm so sorry to cut you and all. And for the interest of time, this is probably the longest podcast I have here. And each of you, Mr. Mo, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I appreciate you driving all the way from Ramatlabama to Johannesburg to be here just for me.
Thank you, sir.
Just for me. We have not met till today. So there was no reason for you to come here. So I really appreciate you.
History has no blank pages.
Yes, sir.
I like that. I like that.
We don't fill
And-
up the pages. People make up their own stories.
True. And I'm glad to be one of the people to fill that story of, YBA2NW. For those that understand it, great. For those that don't, find out. It will be really important for you to do it.
And one other thing that's important to mention, I don't know if I'm audible. Am I audible? Okay, sorry to do this to you, OG, but my mic died. So one thing that's important to mention, there's a big debate about when and how Motswako started. Setswana rap may have started in Botswana, but Motswako started in Maftown.
Yeah.
You
But
heard it here first.
also with the Setswana rap, it's Solo B encouraging one of the guys to do a jingle in Setswana to imitate,
Shout out to Nomadic.
this guy that Solo B knew, which is Stoan, because Solo B is married to Stoan's sister cousin. Hallelujah.
History.
You heard that.
But shout out to Nomadic. Shout out to Nomadic.
Yeah.
One love.
But I was still doing my thing, so trying to close it out. You know what? They were telling me they're already an hour late for where they have to go. So I'm trying to do this for them, right? So a big thank you to Stoan a person that, like I said, that I always saw him beyond me. I always saw, and again, I want to say it for the second time, you already know how I see myself. I see myself as great, the best to ever do it, and so much more. But he was far beyond my imagination, right? So I've met superstars in the United States, a few times, shake hands with, but I didn't think I'd meet him. So the fact to know that there's some things I learned from him, even off screen, to know some of the histories, including with Mr. Mo here about Bophuthatswana, and even long before it became a state of Bophuthatswana. Thank you for imparting that knowledge upon me. Thank you for also giving everybody else the opportunity to become who they are, because of that, I'm able to tell some sort of history. I'm the least relevant amongst y'all, but at least I have a story because you existed. Right?
Comme ça. All respect.
Yeah. And Tony, although I met you at a much later stage as opposed to all the other people like your HHP and more, you were a teacher. When I met you, I already knew Morafe 10 years back then, and I never got to meet you in the time of the development, but I've heard of you a lot of times. And the fact that I knew you as a teacher to teach so many students. Some of those students today are stars today.
Gucci Coke, dope.
They are stars today.
Benchmark.
For real.
Timo DV.
So thank you to you. I must also say that since you won the WhatsApp group, you were the most active one there. Because I think if you weren't as active, I was very suspicious about him, about the two of them. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for putting that there. Still, my diss track to Test Man is still coming. Shout out to you,
he's a ninja.
Yeah,
it's right, it's on you.
That's it.
Good luck to you.
Good luck to you.
Oh, so that's what it is, huh? So what about having my back on my own show?
We don't know Goofy, man.
Now, shout out to everybody that came, and thank you so much for being to the G2G podcast. You've honored me with this moment. I have interviewed stars, I've interviewed politicians, and so many more, but it is the first time in my career is like 4 months old, but it's the first time in this 4 months I felt this honored to have all of you here.
Thank you, sir.
Respect, brother.
And thank you so much to that. And I'm not speaking bad to anybody before y'all text me, and I know how you guys are. But shout out to you guys. And to close this out, peace out. My OG said the most complimenting thing that I could think of. Brother, can you please say that again?
No, Gaston, we're in this time where we're seeing the diaspora coming to Africa, and a lot of the time there's cringe moments where you're like, they don't really understand, the nuances and the depth of what they're talking about. But for you, man, I really appreciate the fact that you have kept connected. You are real to yourself, first of all, because someone else would be trying to change the accent, but you are who you are. But at the same time, when you open your mouth, we can hear your knowledge and your connection to what the history is all about. And for me, I appreciate that as a Grootman, because when we forget who we are and where we come from, that's the start of the demise.
Yeah, and most importantly, remember, as an artist, as a creative, the world has been lied to about Africa. It's time to tell real African stories to the world.
Yeah. And I hope I can be that Pan-African voice. And Mr. Mo, why were you making noise in the background?
Thank you, guys. All I wanted to say is every day remember how blessed you are to still be walking this earth every day. Yeah. Make the most of every day as it comes. And nobody's promised tomorrow. Live your best life today.
Let me leave you with a verse inspirational. It's English though, it's not Motswako, it's not S.T.O.A.N, right? It's English. You gotta have the courage for your convictions and stick to the mission. Follow through, accomplish what you're wishing. Go through with your vision, don't let your stomach make your decisions. Bleeding death by 1,000 incisions, bleeding from 1,000 lesions. Your failures, your lessons. Choose a new direction and follow your passion. Speak less and do more, a man of action. Multiplication, no fractions as we cash these transactions. Feed your team on your knees, be serious about what you're asking, and receive from God your blessings. Motswako, Pula!